And moving into our main topic discussion this week, we're talking about how blockchain is going to transform investing. And so we're talking about blockchain, we're talking about capital markets. I think maybe the best place to start is to really go with those initial definitions about what we're talking about here. So Herwig, how would you define a security token and what that means for the market?
Yeah, obviously we're transforming, investing with security tokens. So what is a security token, right? Well, a security token is essentially a digital investment. So anything like a stock or any really profit-sharing contract or interest, just like we talked about with the IPO of INX, is considered a security by the SEC and most regulators around the world. So when we're talking about transforming investing, we're talking about transforming investing using security tokens, which is really just digitizing the investment process. Would you agree?
Yeah, so essentially you're taking that real-world asset and then you're creating a digital representation of it. They're legally tied together so that you own this one share of this digital token. You also own one share of the real-world version. And what that allows us to do is really create so much more efficiencies in the capital markets and in this system. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about a security token. It's this investment in a digital token that legally represents an investment in something that we can see in the tangible world. And so this is incredibly exciting because it really does transform access into investment products. And we talk about this all the time, but really in the traditional markets, going IPO or going on the stock market is really the only way for an investor to actually be able to get access in owning a lot of these different businesses. The private markets are incredibly illiquid, meaning that they don't trade the same way. It hasn't been possible for the average Joe to get access in these things. And the digital markets can create this opportunity for equality for everyone, not only here just in the US, but internationally as well.
Totally agree with that. I mean, even through Corona, we saw the pandemic create a forced digital transformation for many, many different businesses. And if we look at Robinhood actually as a company, they've made it easier to access Wall Street through their app, a new interface that's leveraging digitization to make it easier for investors to participate. We started to see this trend more and more, and now it's happening thanks to security tokens for investors all around the world to be able to participate and access different offerings, which of course also leads to potentially more demand, right? Because if you weren't able to participate in the first place, even though you wanted to, you weren't considered part of the demand equation. But if you make it easier for more people to be able to access your investment opportunity and there is demand for it, well then of course, you're going to get more opportunity and more investment and potentially better, more efficient secondary markets.
Yeah, and by access, we're talking about new assets. We're private companies, startups, apps that you've been using on your phone that you'd love to be able to buy some shares of now because they may be successful in the future. We're talking about luxury sports cars or art, right? Buying a share of a Van Gogh painting, which is something that would never have been possible before in the traditional markets, and creating all these opportunities, intellectual property, and investing in your favorite creative works and a lot of these different pieces on top of the business vehicles that we've covered already on the show and many episodes past, as well as what we have today. And so on top of all of that, we're talking about increasing global access. You mentioned this, right? So of course, bringing these new vehicles is exciting. These new investment products is incredibly exciting. But also bringing traditional investments and all of these traditional things that we're used to here in the US and opening those opportunities up to the world is also its own opportunity. That's so much additional demand and capital driving towards our real estate sector, driving towards our traditional public equity sector that you might not have access to if you were somebody outside of the US or in a different jurisdiction. And so with security tokens, by creating a standard that everybody can use and participate with, it creates this opportunity for anyone to have the same access to any type of investment, which is just so exciting.
It's huge. Let's walk it from another angle, right? So if you wanted to invest in a startup or a real estate opportunity, first of all, you usually have to be someone who has the exclusive access to those opportunities. So regardless of whether you qualify, the idea of finding a fund for a real estate project is very difficult to begin with. If you did find them, you're probably hopping on a couple phone calls, you're doing a little back and forth, your attorneys may be chatting, and then finally you'll do some document signing and the investment can be transferred. When that can be done completely digital, you can now have the access be much easier. The actual process is much cheaper and more efficient. As a result, the minimum investment can go down and therefore create even more access for people to be able to participate. This is the power of digitization. This is what blockchain is doing to transform investing. What else you got?
Well, I really am excited about this opportunity of automating a lot of the things that we've talked about with the DTCC, for example, right? You're talking about taking the compliance and all of the settlement features that traditionally would have to be leveraged by manual processes, which cost a lot of money, which make it very difficult for firms to actually be able to provide these services directly to investors. And by automating a lot of these processes, by leveraging the blockchain technology, it drastically reduces the barrier to entry for investors to be able to participate. It reduces the need for firms to be able to sell your data and sell your privacy like we've seen with Robinhood happening in the past. It can create a much more inclusive financial system for anyone around the world because we're bringing that cost basis of actually leveraging these trading features and these opportunities, bringing that cost of capital down and really creating a new opportunity for people. So even that's incredibly exciting for me.
I mean, what you're talking about there is really the whole governance and management of investors in general as a result of digitizing using the blockchain becomes dramatically easier. The whole process is now digital, if you will. For example, when I wanted to get dividends and distributions, it typically would maybe happen via a wire and it would be slow and it maybe happen on a monthly or quarterly basis. Now, as a result of the technology, an issuer can go ahead and actually pay out thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. It really doesn't matter because it's all programmatically through an algorithm, through smart contracts that pay everybody the amount that they deserve based on how much they own via the token. And on top of that, the idea of doing daily dividends is a major game changer because when I had to use a bank to pay out my investors, that was extremely costly to do. And then on top of that, when it comes to voting, you have to usually show up in person. There's usually very little technology used by issuers to manage their investors. Now, of course, thanks to it all being under the same sort of digital roof, it becomes very easy for me to enable people from around the world to vote with their rights that they have in the actual investment.
Yeah, this is not easy, right? We're talking about anyone around the world. So you've got, 150 or 200 countries around the world now, and tracking the ownership from one country to another, from one investor to another. They may have different standards on who can invest in what vehicle. They may have a standard around what kinds of assets can go where. And then just imagine tracking that cap table between all of those different countries. It would be incredibly difficult to do manually and understandable why it's not really something that's always offered. But that being said, with the blockchain, we can keep track of this so much more effectively, which just provides so much more opportunity for really anyone around the world.
It makes things easier.
Any of that stuff, man. It's exciting. It's
absolutely.
Really cool.
Remember, what we're basically telling you is yesterday, you would have to go and do a lot of work to find out your real estate investment opportunity. You'd have to go through many manual processes or even physical where you have to show up in person, do a call and things like that. And then you would basically get serviced the same exact way. You probably wouldn't hear anything. Maybe you get an update email or maybe something in the mail, and that's about it. Now, you can actually trade it. You can receive your dividends digitally. You can participate in voting digitally. You can access a website. And as a result of these technologies, it becomes cheaper and easier to make that investment into that real estate offering. And the very next day, just like with a company like Realty that you mentioned earlier, you could be owning security tokens almost near instantly that represent real estate and start getting paid. That didn't happen before, and now it absolutely is.
The future of finance is here. We're talking about new opportunities. We're talking about global access. We're talking about increased efficiencies. And I really think that that's a great place that we can call that main topic here on the episode. So, unless you have anything else you want to add about why it's changing.
No, I think we're only just getting started. There's definitely some other things like collateralizing your equity, much easier to take a loan, staking, and all kinds of other stuff that we're going to be getting into on this show for sure, and another main topic. But for now, I do want to remind you all that everything we discuss, and if you want to learn learn more, you can always go to stomarket.com for all your latest news, trading information. We actually, as I mentioned earlier, on a weekly basis have our clubhouse at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Check
if you
that
need
out.
an invite,
Come hang out.
definitely come hang out with us, ask us questions about this week's show, and meet some other industry leaders, CEOs, issuers, attorneys, all that are in this space as well.
We also just launched a newsletter, so you can check that out, coming out Monday mornings, hot into your inbox. What's Drippin', by Jonah Schulman, Head of Communications at Security Token Market. Great newsletter. It's super casual, a lot of fun to read. Covers all of the must-read news each week. You can check that one out as well. And
first edition just came out yesterday.
hot off
Timeline of
the
this
press.
production here, so that's awesome.
So check us out on YouTube if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere else you can listen to it. Definitely go to YouTube. You can see us on video. I know all you listening can't see all the great graphics and everything we got going on here. So check it all out. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening and happy tokenizing.